Back to Street Smart. It's not every day that Republicans and Democrats can agree on policy, but that's just what happened with a bipartisan group of former White House economic advisors. They announced it today on the Politico website. Titled "Unsustainable Budget Threatens U.S., the op-ed urges Congress and the White House to use recommendations of the President's Budget Commission released in December as a starting point for legislative action. Joining us now is Greg Mankiw, one of the signatories of the op-ed and the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President George W. Bush. He's currently an economics professor at Harvard University. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk first of all about the sort of unity here. It's interesting because you don't normally see two groups getting together and actually not just suggesting that we reduce the deficit, but actually suggesting ways to do it that, well, some of you think are sort of difficult to go through with, right, for each individual person.
Oh, absolutely. Economists are famous for not agreeing with one another, but on certain issues we do agree. And I think what the group of us realized was that there's a lot of agreement on the importance of reducing the budget deficit, a lot of agreement that the Bowles-Simpson Commission put on the table lots of really interesting ideas that really are a pathway towards fiscal sustainability, and it's not getting as much attention as it should. So what we did is we got together, 10 of us, about half Republicans, half Democrats, and said, look, take this seriously, take the budget deficit seriously before there's another financial crisis down the road.
Professor Mankiw, great to see, you guys being able to get people together, but let's be realistic. It seems like, you look at Washington, the folks down there, Democrats, Republicans, they can't come together on anything unless it's potentially a crisis and their backs up against the wall. How realistic is it that we can get Democrats and Republicans together to work on what really is a serious fiscal situation here?
Well, I'm a big believer that our elected leaders are in some sense really followers, and they'll do what the American people want them to do. So one of the purposes of this op-ed was to raise awareness among the American public, to make people realize how important this is, how important this is for our children in particular. And if the public gets around this idea of deficit reduction and moving towards fiscal sustainability, our elected leaders will surely follow the public's lead on that.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking is, you look at the list here and you see Glenn Hubbard, you, Ed Lazier on the same list as Chrissy Romer and Laura Tyson. Normally you guys aren't grouped together, but here's an issue where Americans, regardless of which party they typically vote for, are going to be probably against a lot of the things that you want to push through, right? Because they want to keep their Social Security. They want to keep their Medicare. They want to keep their tax deduction. Certainly, it's going to be tough for people to swallow no matter what party they prefer.
Oh, I think there's no question that it's going to be difficult. I mean, they've been told for years by the political parties that the only thing we need to do is get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in government, or just raise taxes on the richest 1% of the population. That'll solve the problem. The problem is much bigger than that. There's going to be real sacrifices by the vast middle class, and whether it's going to be the spending side or the tax side, it's going to hit people hard, and it's not going to be easy to swallow. But ultimately, we're going to have to do something along these lines because the budget arithmetic simply doesn't add up. We can't continue doing what we're doing without, at some point, running into a major financial crisis.
Professor Mankiw, some might argue that the middle class have already been hit hard for a long, long time, and that's folks at the upper income, the really wealthy, that haven't been. I mean, do we need to, though, target certain groups specifically here to help us kind of get this through?
I think it's going to be a situation of shared sacrifice. I don't think you can ask any small group to do it. And if you look at what the Bowles-Simpson Commission proposed, they proposed things that really do affect the middle class. For example, reducing Social Security, particularly for high-income recipients. They suggested doing away with the mortgage interest deduction or limiting it severely. But that's a benefit that tends not to benefit the poor, who tend to not be homeowners, but benefits the middle class and upper classes. There's no reason you need to subsidize $1 million mortgage, for example. $1 million mortgages aren't middle working class people. $1 million mortgages are fairly wealthy people.
So where would you start here? Because the list is long in terms of what needs to be dealt with. What would you start with here in terms of tackling the deficit?
Well, I'd look at Social Security. I think there's some pretty good ideas on how to solve that problem. It involves things like slowing the growth of benefits for high-income recipients, raising the retirement age, and maybe indexing the retirement age to life expectancy. I think we need to look at the tax code. And the big idea there was not to raise rates, but rather to broaden the tax base by getting rid of a variety of tax exclusions. I think that's pretty important.
Can I just ask, I mean, what if you have a situation where the voters are saying, OK, we need to take some pain, we'll do it. There's no way, clearly, that Washington politicians are going to talk about reforming Social Security specifically in an election year. And if you talk about changing the tax code, I mean, this is a politician's gravy train. That's not the kind of thing that they're going to change, right?
Well, no, it's certainly hard to do. I mean, the key is to get the American people behind major reform, make people start thinking about the budget deficit and what it's doing to our children. And if people start focusing on that, I think they'll ask politicians to do that. And if politicians think the voters want it, they'll deliver.
All right. Hey, Greg, thanks so much for joining us. Greg Mankiw there, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.